Hey everyone. Um, okay, I'm not really sure what to say, but it feels wrong to just release this episode and pretend like nothing's happening in the world that's more important than a podcast about movies. As I record this on the evening of June 1st, 2020, there are protests happening all across the United States and the world over the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. But people are taking to the streets over more than just George Floyd. I can't presume to say that I understand what everyone's feeling right now, but I will say this. Over the last 3 years, we've gotten to know a lot of people who listen to our show, and if they're any indication, I don't need to spend a lot of time here explaining how important it is to understand, accept, and repeat that Black Lives Matter. If your response to that is correct, then we're good. But if your response is anything along the lines of course they do, but you need to take a step back and learn more about the idea and the organization. The Black Lives Matter website is a really good place to start, and I've linked to them in the show notes for this episode. Okay, so I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about being an ally right now. So if you're a listener that feels like you don't need to hear that specifically, feel free to skip ahead to the episode itself. So, for the people like me who are trying to be allies right now and are sticking around for a minute, I want to take a minute to talk about support and how important it is right now to make sure that if you're someone who's in a position to be an ally, that you're an active ally, not just a passive ally. Posts on social media are generally good, and at their best, they align people and help them process. But there are good people doing good work out there, and if you're not in a position to be there with them, you can financially support many of them directly. There are a lot of them out there, but I'm going to list 4 of them just to make it as easy as possible for you to get started if you're able to make a donation. I've linked to them all in the show notes. If you want to support the Floyd family directly, I've linked to the George Floyd Memorial Fund. The Minnesota Freedom Fund is a nonprofit that pays criminal bail for people who have been arrested while protesting police brutality. Or you can look for a similar organization in your area to support people who have been arrested while protesting in your community. Also, Black Visions Collective and Reclaim the Block are organizations in Minnesota on the front lines of the Minneapolis protests, focused on reshaping the community and advocating for community-led safety initiatives. We've linked to all of them. If you are able, please consider donations to any of them or Black Lives Matter, but the truth is that there are a lot of good organizations out there that can use financial support. Again, to those of you that consider yourselves an ally in this fight, please make sure that you're an active ally. We love you all, and while we want you to stay safe, we also don't want to lose sight of the goal to get justice for George Floyd and victims like him and to send the message that Black Lives Matter. Okay. Cool. Now I have to be fun. Let's turn our attention to this episode, Adapter Parish, episode 68, Pride and Prejudice Revisited, part 2. I talked about this in the last episode, but when we recorded, we went a little longer than usual, so the episode was split in 2, and here you have the second part. If you haven't listened to the previous episode, I recommend stopping here, giving it a listen, and rejoining us. Then, in 2 weeks, on Tuesday, June 16th, we'll release the third part of this look at Pride and Prejudice, where we're looking at some of the more non-traditional adaptations, things like Bridget Jones's Diary, Bride and Prejudice, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and more. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections about today's episode that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adapterparishcast@gmail.com or tweet at us using the AdaptCast hashtag. If you enjoy the show, we'd love it if you would share that with the world by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. Show notes from this and all other episodes can be found at adapterparishcast.com. And with that, on with the show, Adapter Parish, episode 68, Pride and Prejudice Revisited, part 2. Let's move on to... I've been thinking a lot about how we're going to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because I told you I listened to the other episode, which again, I hope people don't listen to it. Don't listen to it. It's fine. One thing that I did in the first episode all the time when we talked about this 1995 version is it just kept repeating the words, "It's wonderful."
Yeah.
Do you agree that it's wonderful?
Yes.
Do you think that that makes good podcast?
I mean, we didn't know what the fuck we were doing.
We didn't. I want to get into it,
I don't
though.
want you to be too hard on yourself.
You keep saying that. I'm fine. This is art. Like,
Okay.
like we're making a thing and we're improving as we go.
Great.
I have no problem looking back.
Okay.
But I think the thing we have to do right now is we really have to dig in and figure out, why does the 95 version work so well?
Mm-hmm.
Where would you, just for a little context, if you were going to make a top 5 adaptations of all time, like personal favorites, would this be on the list?
Yes.
Okay.
And many people's, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's the thing too. This isn't just like our opinion. This is a lot of people's opinion, as you say. Why though? Why is it so good? I have some ideas, but what works about this? What works in this so much better than so many other adaptations?
I mean, it all comes down to what you were kind of talking about with this 1980 version, only they did all these things really well.
Yeah.
There's the writing,
mm-hmm.
there's the production, which includes the direction, the costumes, the design, all of that, and there's the casting. And if you get all 3 of those right, then you're going to come up with something great. Like that, it's not that complicated. This isn't, we talked about this while we were watching. This isn't the kind of thing where none of it should have worked and somehow it just became this smash hit and smash success and it's greater than the sum of its parts and it's just this mystery as to why it's so amazing. No, they got a really good writer to write a really good script. And they got really good people who cared to produce and direct and design the costumes and design the set. And they assembled an amazing cast of perfectly cast, fabulous actors. It's not a surprise that when you do all of those things with care, you get something good. And it doesn't mean that everything that is good has to have all of those things. Some things really are like surprisingly good for reasons beyond everyone just was good at their jobs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like some things are more ethereal than that. But like, I think you can really pin it down to they worked hard and did a good job and got good people to do good work. Do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, can I try a sports metaphor?
No.
So let's think about baseball. I feel like there are 2 ways. Here are 2 examples of the way that a team can win a game.
Mm-hmm.
A match, game, baseball game, bases and bats. One way to do it is to have a star player that only hits home runs and only when the bases are loaded, and the pitcher, for whatever reason, refuses to walk them.
Mm-hmm.
That sure is exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Must be fun to see.
Yeah.
And I feel like there are a lot of movies out there, especially adaptations, that might be like centered around one amazing performance,
mm-hmm.
an incredible performance, a 5 in a row Grand Slam performance,
mm-hmm.
but maybe nothing else really works that well.
Yeah.
But that still could be someone's favorite adaptation because of that one thing. But there's another way to win a game, which is everyone gets on base, and that wins you the game.
Yeah.
Because if every single person stepping up to the plate gets on base, you are going to score runs. And then when they're in the field, if they can get outs, they're going to get back up to base faster and they're going to get more runs.
Yeah.
And they will win. That is another way to win. And that's what this is doing.
Yeah. It's just working hard.
At every facet.
At everything. I'm going to do a different metaphor because I've never really been on a sports team. So I'm going to do a metaphor.
You played T-ball.
When I was really little. I'm going to do a metaphor for the only team that I've been on as a near adult, which was my high school brain game team. We were state champions 2 years in a row. Both years I was on the team, we were state champions. And I don't think it was because every single person on that team was a trivia genius that, could defeat Ken Jennings in a head-to-head battle. Like, yeah, I went on to be on Jeopardy. You know what I mean? Like, we had people on the team that were good at trivia and interested in trivia, but like, the reason that we were so good is we practiced really hard.
Yeah.
And we had a coach that was really invested in practicing and didn't think that the way to win games was just to like get a bunch of smart people and throw them up on the stage unprepared. He drilled us. You know what I mean? Like, he worked really hard on being a coach and he drilled us and we did a good job. And I think I think that's part of it. You have to have people that are really good, but if you have people that are really good and also practice hard and work hard, it's going to be even better and consistent, more consistent. That's the other thing too.
Yeah. Do you want to dig into it?
Yeah, I really do.
Okay, so let's start with the writing.
Okay.
So I found some cool things about the writing of this. Let's talk about who wrote it. It was written by Andrew Davies.
Amazing.
Let's talk about context again.
Yeah.
We have almost 3 years of context that has become a lens that we now look through everything through. We have watched something he wrote that wasn't good.
What did he write that wasn't? Oh, wait, what was it?
It was A Room with a View.
Yeah.
Remember that TV version?
I do.
That we didn't care for?
And we had thoughts about that.
Like thoughts about the writing specifically.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to go ahead and say that was an Andrew Davies script that we watched that we didn't care for many reasons. So it's nice to be able to look at him not as this like amazing paragon of writing, but as someone who is very good at what he does. And when he wants to show up, he shows up.
Yeah.
He made this great little video going through his 5 rules for how to adapt Jane Austen that he employed when he was making Pride and Prejudice. Going to go through those rules.
Please.
Rule number 1, include the male perspective.
Okay.
Kind of famously, there are no scenes in Pride and Prejudice that are from an entirely male perspective because Jane Austen didn't have that.
Yeah, I think no scenes in Jane Austen. I think that's famously so. Yeah.
What is the very, very first shot of this entire Pride and Prejudice?
Oh, it's Bingley and Darcy.
Yeah.
Like buying the house at Netherfields.
And we get stuff like that throughout the thing. And like, it's not like anyone looked at this and said, you know what, this needs more men.
No.
But if you're going to craft something and fill it with characters, you want those characters to have a full life.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe seeing men together tells you more about who they are as characters. So I think that's a good idea.
Yes.
Rule number 2, don't be afraid of physicality and sexuality.
Whoa, he was not.
He wasn't at all.
No.
Anything coming to mind?
Wet Mr. Darcy.
The lake scene. Everyone talks about the lake scene.
Yeah.
Not in the book at all. When we did our first episode, you would have remembered it as him being like shirtless or pantsless.
Yeah.
And he's not.
He's not. Well, there's the fencing scene with him too. Like
Yes.
he's just like super sexy.
We talked about this at one point in the first episode where like apparently one of the quotes in whatever scene where Darcy sees Elizabeth in the script.
Oh, I remember you saying
And this is it's gross, but like if you're trying to make good art, sometimes you have to be gross. He basically wrote in the stage directions that Darcy gets an erection.
Yeah. Yeah, because art is about people and people have bodies and bodies do things.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So I think that was smart.
Yes.
I think it was really smart. And again, it adds to them being really full characters.
Yeah.
Rule number 3, don't be afraid to add scenes.
Yeah.
This is the thing that we talk about constantly, which is like, can you make something? Can you add a scene that feels like that? Can you add a scene that you are shocked to find wasn't in the original?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I love so much about this adaptation, because you think of it as being really, really, really faithful. And there is a bunch in this, not a lot, but little scenes here and there. The lake scene, like some of the most memorable scenes aren't in the book. The lake scene.
Even the proposal scene.
Even the proposal
the
scene.
The scene's in the book, but nothing that's said is in the book.
Yeah, he doesn't have that huge long speech that we think he does. Like in the book, it's much shorter. You know,
I could make a list of like top 5 like dialogue scenes, just scenes of like 2 people in a room having a conversation. I would say that the first proposal scene would be in my top 5. And not in the book. That came out of Andrew Davies' head, but informed by the book.
Yeah.
Informed by the characters that he was creating.
Yeah.
Rule number 4, a look can be worth 1,000 words.
Oh my God.
Is there one? Let me ask you this. I hope the answer is yes. Have you ever caught me looking at you the way Darcy looks at Elizabeth when she's at the piano?
Yeah, maybe like before we were married.
Well, that makes me sad.
Oh.
Hang on. I'm going to try this right
try
now.
it? All right. Do you want me to look up?
Yes. Is it not working?
No, it's do it again. It was better the first time.
Yeah, I don't know what I did. But like, I think everyone agrees, like, that's one of the best scenes in the entire thing.
Yeah.
And that's not, like, that is something that's in the script because it's in stage direction, but it's not something where they are trying so hard, you know?
Yeah.
They're not saying, like, oh, we can't have silence. We can't have people just looking at each other. We need there to be dialogue. We need there to be action. That's how can we do it? Like, no. it is okay every now and then to have the characters just kind of look at each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Rule number 5, delayed gratification.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that he felt was really important to embrace in Jane Austen. This was one of the biggest problems that I had with 1940. The fact that, like, it's not a surprise that Darcy and Lizzie get together.
They like each other the whole time.
The whole time. In this one, though, when they finally get together, you have been with them for hours at this point.
Yeah.
And they have both had to grow. And then he finally asks and she says yes. And it's so utterly satisfying because he was willing to be patient.
And how many times have I seen this and it still feels suspenseful to watch that scene where he's walking and he's like, my feelings are unchanged, but if you still feel how you felt last year, I promise I'll never mention it again. And that little pause before she replies, like, your butt just clenches and you know how it's going to end. Of course she's going to say yes because she loves him. But it is truly masterful. It's so suspenseful, that little moment. And that is acting and directing and writing all together to create this like perfect little moment.
Yeah. Here's another thing about the writing.
Yeah.
That's done with 5 rules.
Great.
I believe that the writing makes the drama work between the characters because of the period, not in spite of it.
Yes. Agreed.
I don't want to put you on the spot right now,
Mm-hmm.
but one of the things that has really affected my appreciation of Pride and Prejudice over the last few years is hearing you talk about why the time period is actually important.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does the time period actually inform the emotional journey that the characters are going on? How does this story have to take place in this time period?
I mean, I think the best example of that is Charlotte Lucas and Mr. Collins, right? So we know some things about Charlotte. She and Lizzie are really good friends. She's a little older than Lizzie. She's 27. Her father is a sir, but they're not like particularly well off, like not to the point that they can, support an old maid spinster for the rest of her life. And she has ideas about marriage that Lizzie doesn't necessarily share, but that are not uncommon at all in this time period. And that if this were a modern movie and you had a character say, I'm not in love with him, but I'm going to marry him because he can provide a secure home and future for me, you would not like that character. Like that isn't something that we do these days. Well, I won't say that. People do that all the time, but we don't think well of them for marrying like someone rich that they don't love. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's not something that is valued today. And the great thing is that we get Lizzie's perspective on this, but we also get other characters' perspective, and we also are seeing it through the lens of the society where they're living. And Jane says to Lizzie, not everyone is the same. Like, not everyone values what you value. You have sort of high ideals about love, and not everybody feels that way. And it's totally normal to marry without love. And I'm sorry that it's your friend and you feel like you can't respect her because she's made this decision, but like she's doing the right thing for her, and you have to kind of be okay with that. And Lizzie, Lizzie isn't like vindicated and it doesn't become clear to Lizzie like, oh yeah, I was right and everyone else was wrong. Like Lizzie has to sit back with that and go, yeah, you know what? I do think that maybe everyone should feel the way that I feel, and that's not right. Like I'm actually wrong about this. This was the right thing for Charlotte to do, is to marry Mr. Collins.
Yeah, I feel like if someone was adapting this and what they were doing was fighting against the time period instead of embracing it, they would be really judgmental.
Yes.
Super judgmental of Charlotte, and they would take every opportunity they could to show how much she regretted her choice to be with Mr. Collins. This has a scene where you start to get some good subtext of the choices she has made to distance herself from Mr. Collins as much as possible. But that doesn't become the thing that defines her for the rest of the story. She still is allowed to be Lizzie's friend Charlotte, who made a decision.
Yeah. And again, that's still, even that scene is still all about the time. Like Lizzie can't just come out and say to Charlotte, like, wow, he's terrible. How do you even stand it? And she's like, I know, right? Like she can't speak ill of her husband. Like that's not okay for her to do. But she just says, I really encourage him to be outside as much as possible. It's excellent exercise, and I prefer to sit in this room and he prefers to sit in his other room. And, really, it's strange, but sometimes we don't even see each other the whole day. And that's her way of letting Lizzie know, like, I'm okay and I'm not being like stifled by this man. I'm actually living my best life right now.
I have come to appreciate good subtext so much.
Yeah,
I love it now.
And remind me to come back to this very plot when we talk about the Keira Knightley version, because it's very different in a way that I really didn't appreciate.
One last thing about the writing. I think the characterization is fantastic.
Yeah.
I think all of the characters feel like separate characters.
Yes.
Can I give an example?
Yes.
Kitty and Lydia feel different
Than the rest of the girls.
than each other.
And also each other. Yeah. Exactly.
I think you could really fall into a trap with Kitty and Lydia where you could just say like, oh, they are the two silliest young daughters.
Mm-hmm.
They are basically the same, but that doesn't really explain why one of them gets taken in by Mr. Wickham and the other one doesn't. They have to be different characters in order for them to go on different journeys. And in this one, they really feel different.
Mm-hmm.
Like Lydia absolutely feels more forceful and feels more confident than Kitty. They're both dummies, but they feel like different people.
Yes. And again, just keep going on my favorite character these days. Mary, and this is amazing.
Yeah.
She's so good. I mean, God.
You did the thing with this one that I feel like we talk about a lot where, and I think a lot of people know about this, where you watch a movie or watch a TV show and you say, you know what, on this viewing, I've seen it a million times. This time I'm only going to watch this actor.
I just watched Mary the whole time. She's so good.
Was there a single scene that let you down? Was there a single scene where you were like, you know what, it got to the end of it and Mary didn't do a single thing interesting in the background?
No, she's there was something I noticed on this viewing that I never noticed before, and it was a direct reference, I'm sure, to the book where Mr. Collins is angry at Lizzie because she's rejected his proposal and he's threatening to go away. And there's this kind of throwaway line like, Mary might have been prevailed upon to accept him if he had been willing to stay, but he was not willing and he left. And there's this scene where he's talking to Lizzie about going to the ball and how he's going to ask her to dance. And Mary's just standing there and the look on her face is like, maybe he's going to ask me to dance. And then
there's this little mystery of what he says. He says, I am going to ask one of your daughters to dance.
Yeah.
And for a brief moment, Mary believes that it's her.
Mary thinks it's her, and then it's not, and she's very upset, but just briefly. And then there's that amazing scene at the dance where Mrs. Bennet is like, yes, and Mary sits over there, and there's a shot of Mary just like glumly sitting in the corner. And this poor actress, like, she's an attractive person, like, if you see pictures of her, but like everyone else, like, this isn't like not wearing makeup, but actually she's wearing makeup to look like she's not wearing makeup. I think she is not wearing any makeup at all, and it just makes her look like just sallow and gross and like
a normal person,
like a normal person, but like on film, you know what I mean? And everyone else looks great, and poor Mary, God,
yeah,
it's hard to be the plain sister.
I think you've just made a really good chance for me to segue,
yes,
to the next part, which is the production.
Sure.
So I feel like the production, rather than talking for another hour about it, because there's so much detail in it.
Yeah.
For me, there's like one big thing that really sticks out, which is that they actually gave this a budget.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to imply that you can't make something good without a budget, but oh boy, does it help.
Yeah.
Especially if you're making something and it's a period piece. They had a real budget for this. It took a while for this to get made. It was years that this was in development. And one of the reasons why it finally got made is because the BBC actually co-financed it with A&E. And they had a real budget for it. And that led to, I would say, 3 choices that are things that I think really, really add to this story working. 1, the entire thing is shot on film.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people have talked about this, but one of the reasons why this is notable is because up until now, most BBC productions, most BBC miniseries, pretty much all of them were shot in the same way, which is that if it was indoors, you were in a studio, shot on video, and if you were outdoors, you were shot on film.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, they made the decision, the entire thing is shot on film, and it makes it feel like a movie. Maybe it didn't feel like that in 1995 on video, but boy, does it work now.
Well, because we have the remastered Blu-ray.
But they were able to do it,
yes,
which they couldn't do before.
That's right.
And it was just a great decision, and it makes the entire thing feel very consistent and very cinematic. But another thing that this does is it allows them to go shoot on location.
Mm-hmm.
Real good locations. I feel like the thing that happens in some of these, especially the lower rent ones like the 1981, does Pemberley feel that different than Longbourn where the Bennets live?
No. And this was one of the things that I really wanted to mention, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of the things I was noticing on this viewing, because I was trying to look at some of the details, like I was looking at like their plates and their cups and the things on their walls. Like Longbourn feels like a place where people of their class live, and that feels different from Netherfield, and that feels different from Pemberley, and that feels different from the gardener's house in London where Jane is staying, and it feels different from the inn where Lizzie stays when she's on her vacation. Like everywhere feels different, and it feels like a place where people actually live. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It doesn't just feel like a cardboard set.
Mm-hmm. But then there's the third thing that I think a really good budget allows them to do, which was a really smart shooting schedule. Because the story takes place over a long period of time and it takes place across seasons.
Mm-hmm.
They shot it from I want to say June to November,
Mm-hmm.
so that they could actually have seasons depicted.
Yeah.
And they could take their time with filming, which I think the 1981, I would be shocked if it was shot for more than a couple of months.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good choice, but it happens because you have a budget.
Yeah.
And sometimes a budget helps.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does.
Yeah.
But there was one other thing about the production.
Well, and this goes into the budget too, I think, which is the thing that I've always heard about the way that they did the costumes for this was that they created costumes specifically for example, for the 5 Bennet daughters. And like you said, it was a long shooting schedule over different seasons. So each daughter had a wardrobe created for her that was just her clothes. It was the amount of clothes that someone would have had. And my understanding is they were just kind of allowed to choose what they wanted to wear on any given day, just like a person would choose the dress that they felt like wearing. So that Lizzie's got this kind of salmon colored dress that I think is really pretty on her, that she wears, on kind of nice occasions. And they all had their ball dresses, of course. But not only did they have a budget for clothing that was period appropriate, and they had the correct undergarments and hats and shoes and everything that made it a correct outfit, but everything fits everyone really well because they had people on set whose job it was to make sure that the actors looked good in the costumes. Like everything is just so beautifully tailored, and all the costumes really say things about the characters. It's not just like, oh, here's an 1810s dress, I guess it'll fit you. Yeah, could you go put it on?
Yeah.
Like Mrs. Bennet wears a lot of feathers because she's frivolous, so she wears these funny headdresses sometimes. And the way that Bingley's sisters are dressed is clearly very different from the way the Bennet girls are dressed, because they're rich young ladies from London and the Bennets are not so rich young ladies from the country. Like they wear different types of clothing to a ball. And even Jane and Lizzie dress a little bit differently because people prefer different things. Jane wears a different style of dress than Lizzie prefers to wear because she's a different person. And I really appreciated that. It makes them look and seem like real people.
And we've talked about this before, but sometimes a thing that happens in period pieces that are made by someone who's fighting against the period is that they kind of assume all the characters are surprised to be in that time period.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel that way in this.
No.
Everyone feels utterly comfortable in this time period because that's when they were fucking alive.
Yeah.
They know this time period because it's their life. Feels really genuine. Last thing that works in this, the casting.
Name me a better cast anything.
As an
can't.
adaptation?
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't.
I can't.
Can't do
It's
it.
impeccable. Let's break it down a little bit, though. Let's talk about the daughters.
Okay.
We talked about the 1981 where they all kind of felt the same. And this gets to something that we've talked about before, which is that there is a difference between realism and plausibility.
Yeah.
And in this one, as you say, realistically, their ages are not right.
Right.
But they are plausibly exactly the right ages.
Yeah.
Julia Sawalha is absolutely plausible is Lydia the youngest?
She's the youngest.
She is absolutely plausible as the youngest, even though she's 25 playing 15.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's exactly as you say. If you line them up and stood them next to Alison Steadman and Benjamin Whitrow and said...
Mr. and Mrs. Bennet.
Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, and said, do these people all look alike? You would kind of be like, no, they don't. Could these two people have produced this
Jennifer Ely.
Roman goddess Jane and cute as a button Jennifer Ely. Like, no, probably not. But like, it doesn't matter because it's plausible. Like, it's plausible. They make you believe that this is a family. They all have individual relationships with every other person in the family. Lizzie and Mary have a relationship that is different from Lizzie's relationship with Kitty or with Lydia or with her mother or with her father. Like, everyone has these little moments that make you believe that they are fully fleshed out characters who have relationships to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's writing, but it's also acting. People are doing such amazing things in the background. Like, I challenge you to watch this, and every time someone is speaking, watch someone else.
Yeah.
It's fascinating what background work people are doing in this. It is a testament to casting and to acting.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a good transition too, because like you talk about relationships. Here's another relationship that I think works perfectly well. Crispin Bonham Carter as Bingley, and what's his name? Colin Firth as Darcy.
Oh boy.
Jesus Christ. Bingley and Darcy are friends.
Yeah.
I'd even go so far as to say best friends, even though they are both very different people. It should make sense that they're friends. It should be believable that they're friends.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I feel like it doesn't actually make any sense that these two guys would ever hang out with each other.
Yeah.
But in this one, it does. And I think that's acting.
Yeah.
That's it's really good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the leads.
Okay.
How many leads are in this? I'm going to say there's 4 leads.
Okay.
There's like the 2 main leads, and then there's like the 2 secondary leads.
Okay.
And obviously everyone gets their time to shine. But I would say like the 2 primary leads are obviously Lizzie and Darcy.
Yes.
And then I would go so far as to say the secondary leads are Jane and Bingley.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Jane and Bingley.
Yeah.
What makes Susanna Harker's casting in this so strong?
She's just the epitome of Jane. She looks like Jane.
Mm-hmm.
She looks how you would imagine Jane would look. She's tall and blonde and very pretty, and looks like what the fashion was for very beautiful women to be in this time period.
She looks like a Grecian statue.
Yes, exactly. And she is so sweet. She's so sweet. There was this one moment that I noticed this time that I mentioned to you that really I thought epitomized her character. It reminded me, we have I think we might have told this story on the podcast before. We have 2 friends who are both listeners who are sisters, and one is about 6 years older than the other. And they moved in together when the younger sister graduated from college. And the older sister said to her, I'm looking at apartments. Is there anything like in particular you want me to look for? And the younger sister went, I mean, if it's not too much trouble, like, I guess if I could have my own bedroom. And it's this funny story. It's like you have to like reset your just such a
She was thinking about like, oh, well, we would have on-site laundry or something like that.
Yeah, on-site laundry or like, backyard access or like, something important, something like that like you might not have. And the younger one was coming out of sort of a college roommate situation where you don't necessarily always have your own bedroom. And she actually didn't really mind the idea of sharing with her sister, but it was just this idea of like resetting your expectations, but just to be so sweet and meek about like something that is pretty straightforward for you to want. Anyway, this is a long story to describe the scene, but there's this scene where they're like, Jane and Lizzie are like getting ready for bed, and they're talking about like marriage and all that stuff, and how, the Bennett family is poor and they might have to marry rich men. And Jane turns to Lizzie and she just kind of bites her lip and she says, but Lizzie, I would so like, I would really wish to marry for love. And she's so sweet. And it's like, of course you do. Of course you want that. You should have that. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But it's really adorable.
But it's not coming off as naive.
No, because it's the time. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't assured of marrying for love in that time, especially if you were poor. Like, that was not assured at all. And it was this sort of transitional period too, where, maybe a few hundred years before, the idea of marrying for love was crazy. And then 100 years later, the idea of marrying for love was obvious. But right at this period of time, like, sometimes you did and sometimes you didn't. Like, there was no guarantee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there's Bingley.
Yeah.
This is my favorite Bingley.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of people's favorite Bingley. And I think the reason he's my favorite Bingley is because he is so clearly drawn in that he is kind, sweet, genuine, but also smart.
Yeah.
He's not naive. He's not stupid. You can see, you talk about like watch people in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Watch Crispin Bonham Carter in the background of every scene. He is taking everything in and he is processing all of it, and he's figuring out how he's going to respond in a way that meets his outlook on life.
Yeah.
But he understands what's happening. He has a problem with his friend Darcy being kind of a dick a lot of the time. I love the way his character is drawn. I think it's beautifully done.
Yeah.
I think Bingley is one of those characters that could be nothing.
Yeah.
But instead, he's one of the strongest characters in the entire thing.
Yeah. I mean, here's the deal. We could like spend an entire episode talking about every single character and how much we love them. We've spent no time on Alison Steadman as Mrs. Bennet. She's amazing.
I'm going to do lightning round really quickly.
Okay.
You're allowed to say one sentence.
Yeah.
Barbara Lee Hunt as Lady Catherine.
Impeccable.
Okay.
Yeah.
David Bamber as Mr. Collins.
Hilarious.
You could say more than one word if you want to.
Oh, sorry. I misunderstood the assignment.
David Bamber is Mr. Collins.
He's just
obsequious perfection.
Obsequious. He's so gross. He's the perfect Mr. Collins for me.
Adrian Lucas is Mr. Wickham.
Okay, this was the thing I wanted to talk about.
One sentence. Good. Don't worry about it. Say what you want to say.
This is the same thing we were talking about with why does this smart, amazing person fall for this guy? He's so cute. Adrian Lucas is so adorable. He's like charming and handsome, but he's not like blandly handsome and like blonde and boring like the guy in the 1980s version. He's a little bit wicked. He's a little bit interesting. He has a twinkle in his eye.
Utterly charming.
He's utterly charming. He's so cute. We looked up what Adrian Lucas looks like now, and he's still very handsome. He's a handsome gentleman.
Like if you saw him on the street, you'd be like, man, that guy's really handsome.
Yeah.
Just a handsome older
Just a
guy.
handsome guy, which made me happy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yes, he's really, really good.
Alison Steadman is Mrs. Bennet.
She's so funny. She's really, really funny.
This was actually, we don't have to go too much into detail on this, but this is one of the points I was making about casting, is I really feel like the spectrum of broad to subtle is kind of perfectly balanced. She is utterly broad the entire time, but it works. Like, it really works. This is one of those ones where I feel like we would need an hour to really dig into it, but she is super broad and she works.
Yeah.
Benjamin Whitrow is Mr. Bennet.
He, again, like, utter perfection. He has the sort of Mr. Bennet grumpiness, but he does it with a sense of irony and a twinkle in his eye. And he loves the ridiculous. He loves laughing at ridiculous people. It's a thing that he and Lizzie can do together. They have this like special father-daughter activity. And their relationship is really sweet.
I think their relationship is it's clearly the best drawn of any version that we watched.
Yeah.
I think, like, not even like by a narrow margin, by a wide margin, this is the best version of their relationship.
Yeah.
But let's go back to our two leads, our two real leads. Colin Firth and Jennifer Ely. I still, 3 years later, have a proper crush on Jennifer Ely.
Yes.
She's gorgeous and amazing.
Yes.
And as of our recording of this, has been like on social media reading all of Pride and Prejudice.
Just for enjoyment.
Just to do it for people. Because we're all going through something really hard right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So Jennifer Ely and Colin Firth.
Yeah. Just talk about chemistry. Like name a screen couple with more chemistry than these two. And they barely touch. You know, it's not, I mean, it is kind of sexual.
Well, I will name another couple that I would say has this level of chemistry.
Okay.
Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy.
Sure.
I'm not kidding.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing.
Genuinely not kidding, because chemistry has to do so much more with, like, yes, I've seen some actors that have like intense sexual chemistry on screen, but I think intellectual chemistry is something that's rare, that's more rare.
Yeah.
And I think they have one of the best examples of intellectual chemistry that I've ever seen.
Yeah. So good. Just, the way he looks at her across the room when she's playing the piano.
Going back to the thing I was saying before, I don't want to just say, oh, it's amazing and leave it at that. So I was trying to figure out, like, okay, what makes Colin Firth so good at this? And it can't just be that he's so handsome. It can't be.
He's handsome and he looks at her in that way that I can't describe.
I think I've hit on something.
Okay.
What I'm about to say is kind of reductive, and it's maybe an oversimplification of some people acting. But I do think there's something to be said for one way of dealing with acting as being completely in control of every muscle in your body.
Okay.
I think some actors are. I think some actors aren't. I think some actors are capable of it. I think some actors aren't capable of it. I think Colin Firth is.
Mm-hmm.
And the example I use is the proposal scene.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes down to one line. Can you start me off?
In vain I have struggled. It will not do.
And then he continues to say, "You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you."
Good job.
That's the line.
Yeah.
He does it twice in the entire series, because he does it once for her, but then they shot it again later for her memory.
Uh-huh.
And he delivers the line differently each time.
Uh-huh.
And it really shows how carefully he was delivering it the first time.
Yeah.
And I hope I can describe this, but the way he says it to her the first time is a full body performance. And you wouldn't tell just by looking at it. You have to look really closely. But he says, "You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you."
Mm-hmm.
And there is the most imperceptible pause. And if it wasn't for the fact that he does it later without the pause, that you would even notice it.
Mm-hmm.
But the pause, in that pause, his entire body clenches up and pulls back. And then he says, "Love you."
Yeah.
And it tells you so much about the character.
Yeah.
And in every other version we watched, the line is there. But it's the only one where I actually felt like there was some kind of inner life to the character.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he didn't know up until that moment whether he was even going to say it.
Yeah.
And I get the sense that the entire time that he was walking over, he didn't know if he was going to say that. He didn't know if he was going to say love.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, he committed to it. And you can see him committing to it. And you can see him immediately regretting it. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's masterclass.
Genuinely incredible. I think he is... we talked about this in our 1 year spectacular. He's one of the best bits of casting I've ever seen in anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it overshadows Jennifer Ely, who is also one of the best pieces of casting I've ever seen in anything.
Mm-hmm.
But he is a lot of people's favorite for a reason.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
Yeah. I think let's leave it at that.
Did we crack it?
I think we cracked it. I mean, listen, we could talk about this all day and have, but we still have one more that we need to talk about.
Before we move on, I want to stop you. I want to make a really important point that I think we have to define before we move to the next one.
Okay.
For me personally, nearly every single thing we just talked about as being a strength of the 1995 version doesn't have anything to do with the length. Yes, they have 6 hours to tell this story. Could they have done all of those things in a 2-hour, 2.5-hour version? I think they could have.
Okay.
Casting, location, production value, costuming, set design, relationships, accepting the period. I think all of those things work. All of the things that Davies talked about in terms of his rules, I think all of that works. The one where I'm kind of iffy is showing relationships between characters.
That's the one I was going to say too.
Yeah, if you have that much time, you do get to really show a lot of a relationship with a character, and you really get to live with them. But there is a really old solution for that, which is cut characters.
Yeah.
You can cut characters in an adaptation. That's something you're allowed to do. It might piss people off, but you might end up making something really good. So I just want to say, I really believe that the vast majority of the things that make it strong aren't because it's 6 hours long. I think it's strong and it's 6 hours long. I just wanted to say that before we move to 2005. We watched this movie for the first Pride and Prejudice episode.
Mm-hmm.
What was your reaction to it? What was your basic reaction to it when we watched it originally?
I didn't really care for it.
I also didn't.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you kind of felt going into this, because it was really important to me that we watch it again.
Yeah.
Because I wanted context. That was the third episode we ever did. There were so many adaptations I hadn't watched, and I hadn't watched with a critical eye.
Mm-hmm.
But now we've had 2.5, 3 years of watching things with a critical eye, and some things that I thought I didn't like, I've actually come to appreciate a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And some things I like less.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were watching this one, I want to be really honest. I was really preparing myself to like it,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we watched 1940
Yeah.
and 1980, because there were so many things about it that I think I personally didn't respond to, and I think we didn't respond to. And I thought, you know what? The 2005 one in my memory now isn't as bad as I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
I thought time had softened my view
Mm-hmm.
of this movie. Did you feel anything like that going into it? Did you hope for anything like that going into it?
I hoped for something like that. Yeah. I mean, I think I felt like, having now seen the 1981, at least I would be watching something with like some artistic value and a point of view,
Yeah.
which it has
Mhm.
for sure. And like, I want to kind of reiterate something we talked about in the earlier episode, which is like, we are 100% aware that this is a lot of people's favorite.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely. And we really want to kind of honor that, because I can absolutely see why this would be your favorite version of Pride and Prejudice, especially if this was like what you grew up on or were originally exposed to, and like, this is who these characters are in your mind. Like, I can totally understand why that would be.
Yeah. Which makes me want to say the next thing I have to say very carefully.
Okay.
It might have come out worse than when I watched it the first time. I think
Yeah.
I enjoyed it less this time than I did when we did the first episode.
That's unfortunate. That's too bad.
It bums me out to say that.
Mhm.
I don't want to, because as you say, this means a lot to certain people. There are a couple of things that do stick out as things I liked more this time, but on the whole, I liked it less.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you talk about why?
I mean, I wonder how I want to talk about this, because we can kind of go through the movie really quickly, but also we have our like trinity of things. We have the writing, the production, and the casting.
Yeah. Let's just go through that.
Yeah. So starting with the writing, this was my first note.
Mm-hmm.
It's even faster than I remember.
Well, right.
I think this script tries to include too much.
Yeah, because they're doing it all in 2 hours, but they sort of didn't do any of the things that you just said might be necessary, like cut characters or try to cut major pieces of plot in order to condense something. They just try to go through it all really, really fast.
And when you do that, it's not like it's not effective anymore, because there is something that is effective on a very basic level with this story. But I think you're definitely robbing a lot of things of their impact by trying to do too much. Like, I would assume, let me skip ahead to Lydia and Mr. Wickham, their whole subplot.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't doubt for a moment that anyone who didn't know the story at all and had only seen this version would say, oh, yeah, Mr. Wickham's the bad guy, and Lydia's kind of dumb, and she gets caught up, and they would understand the plot, and they would understand what the characters were going through to a point as a result of what Mr. Wickham did to the Bennets. But I just think that story lacks the impact that it has, certainly in the book, certainly in the 1995 version. And I would say even in like 1980, I think it lacks that. It just happens so quickly.
So quickly. Like, I remember turning to you at one point, and they found out where Lydia was, and the next scene is her coming home to Longbourn. And I said to you, like, God, in the 95 version, how much time elapses between those two things? It's like 2 episodes worth of plot between her being found in London and coming home married to Mr. Wickham.
Yeah, and they don't have an extra 2 hours to work with.
Right.
But an extra 5 minutes?
Yeah, like some indication that time has passed.
Like, there are things you can do in the edit to make it feel like more time has passed, but it genuinely didn't feel like much time had passed. And I just think it's true throughout the entire thing. They try to include too many things. So I want to say something controversial.
Okay.
I don't expect you to agree with me on this.
Okay.
I think you can cut characters from this.
Uh-huh.
I think there is probably a version of the story that could be told without Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
I mean, okay.
Or with 4 daughters instead of 5 daughters. It would be very different. And it would be really hard to do.
Yeah.
But if you want to condense this story, that's a possibility.
I mean, I guess I don't agree in as much as the fact that they have 5 daughters is extremely important to the characters. And yes, you could write a story where there's characters that have 3 daughters, but then is it Pride and Prejudice? Like, then what's the point of it being a Pride and Prejudice adaptation?
I've been thinking about that a lot, and I think I have an opinion on that.
Yeah.
This is not fact, this is my opinion. I think that the central story of Pride and Prejudice is about Lizzie and Darcy.
Yeah.
And to a lesser extent, Jane and Bingley.
Okay.
And I think those 2 stories are tied together. I could see a version of Pride and Prejudice that is about those 2 stories and sacrifices other stories along the way.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, like, again, I guess you don't have to have Lady Catherine de Bourgh. You have to have some reason for Lizzie to encounter Darcy again unexpectedly. And if you're going to write a whole new plot for how she does that, why not just have Lady Catherine de Bourgh? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get that. What I'm saying is, if you try to include everything, I don't know if it works in so short a time.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
I guess that's the central point that I'm trying to make. That
Yeah.
like, I think this story can be told in a shorter amount of time, but you might have to sacrifice certain things. Because we've seen so many adaptations where if we didn't see an adaptation that we really liked that had sacrificed things, we might not have thought that it was possible. But then we do see them and they do sacrifice things and they're still good.
that's fair enough. Yeah, that's fair.
Like I'm talking hypothetically right now.
No, I understand.
But I think the problem with this one is it really tries to include everything.
Yeah.
Which I think is admirable to a point, but I think it ends up making it less successful because you don't get a chance to just exist in this world with these characters.
Yeah.
There are scenes that are slow and there are scenes that are like methodical where I theoretically should get a chance to sit and actually exist with them, but usually they're so one note. It's usually like, well, we're going to stop and we're going to slow down because we need you to see that Lizzie is sad for 2 minutes. And yeah, I get Lizzie's sad, but it's not telling me anything else about who Lizzie is as a character. It's just telling me that she's sad.
Yeah.
That was a central problem that I had with the plotting and the pacing of it. And I think that all stems from the writing.
Yeah.
Can I name another thing that I think we will agree with about the writing in this? It fights with the period at every turn.
Oh my God. So much. That was one of the things I was going to mention. Not only it fights with the period, but it also thinks that you, the audience, aren't going to understand what's going on. So you need to have things explained to you.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that coincides with fighting with the period. I have a really good example. Charlotte Lucas has decided to marry Mr. Collins. And she comes to see Lizzie, and Lizzie's like in the barn because they're all like living with the pigs apparently in this version.
I have a note about that later.
Yeah.
When we get to the production, I want to talk about the general dirtiness of the movie.
Yeah. And Lizzie says something like, oh, how could you? And Charlotte just like launches into this speech, which I'm kind of going to paraphrase poorly, but it's basically like, Lizzie, you just don't understand. I'm 27. I'm getting older. I'm an old maid and I'm scared. My parents can't support me. And how dare you judge me, Lizzie? How dare you? And she just stalks away. Like all of that. And Lizzie has no reaction. Like she just launches into this long monologue. And like, it's the writers not trusting you to understand Charlotte as a character and understand the decisions that she had to make in the context of the period in which she lives. Like, talk about the difference between that scene and that sort of subtle scene that you mentioned in the 95 version where Lizzie goes to visit Charlotte and Charlotte like very, very cannily explains to her that things aren't so bad by talking about like Mr. Collins being in his garden all day.
Again, a great example of text versus subtext.
Yeah. And then just the modernity of the phrase, like, how dare you judge me, Lizzie? Don't you judge me? Like, it's so grating on the ear. And I don't blame the actress. She's doing the best job that she can, but it is not a good scene. And like, that's kind of the end of Charlotte. Like that's what we see of her. And I feel talked down to when I see something like that. I feel like there's a writer somewhere saying, well, you're not going to understand this, so I'm really going to hammer it home for you. And it's like, I understand. I might understand it better than you do because you feel the need to explain it. Maybe you're the one who is confused. You know?
Yeah. I want to go out on a limb and I want to make another wild assumption.
Okay.
Is this number 2 or number 3 for this episode?
I don't know.
It's been a long
65.
one, so I'm not sure. So this was written by Deborah Mogash, or Mogak. I still am not sure. 3 years ago, I didn't know how to pronounce her name. I still don't know how to pronounce her name. She wrote this movie, and from what I could tell, like she has done some screenplays, but she's primarily a novelist.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my wild speculation.
Mm-hmm.
My wild speculation is that Pride and Prejudice as a book means a lot to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she had a pretty big chip on her shoulder about doing this right
Mm-hmm.
and about translating this right.
Mm-hmm.
I think she took her job seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is I think it's like a combination of taste problem and some miscalculations.
Okay.
I think she really believed that a modern audience wouldn't fully appreciate it as much as she does.
Yeah.
So she needed to condescend to the audience and a lot of times to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I genuinely don't know, but that's what it feels like to me because it's so consistent throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
And I don't get the impression from her that she was a hired gun and didn't take this seriously. I get the impression that she did take this seriously, and yet she still made those choices that are driving us crazy.
Yeah.
So they had to have been on purpose.
Yeah.
That's my wild speculation.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds plausible.
I just had one other thing about fighting with the period.
Yeah.
And this was, again, in the interest of not having people listen to the first version of the episode and come back to this one. Is it plausible in that time period that Bingley would pop into Jane's room while she is sick and in bed and in her undergarments?
No.
While she is staying in his house?
No, he just like wanders in. He just wanders in. I remember getting so angry about this in the other episode. Like she's like, for all intents and purposes, in her bra and underpants, and he's just like standing in the room. It would be so inappropriate for him to do so. Like ridiculous. And he's just hanging out, and because she's just in bed, like, you know, she's fully covered from her neck to her ankles. Like there's nothing that we would see as like improper about it, but like she's a single woman in his house in bed. Like he might as well have gotten her pregnant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, this is something like this is kind of the opposite side of what I was just talking about, that like you can cut things. I think you can cut pieces of the plot, but the central plot of Lizzie and Darcy and Jane and Bingley, so much of that depends on the way that men and women treated each other at the time. If it was modern, they would have had it out much earlier.
Yeah.
Like if it was modern, I think Bingley and Jane would have had a discussion.
Yeah.
And Bingley would have said something about the fact that Darcy told him that he shouldn't stay with Jane.
Yeah.
And Lizzie and Darcy would have had it out. I'm sure those things would have happened because in a more like, we're not as repressed as they were back then, but the repression is part of what makes the end so satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, here's another example. You mentioned earlier, like this sense that people seem surprised to have woken up and found themselves in this time period.
Yeah.
Which they wouldn't, because they live in this time period. If we were suddenly whisked back, we would be very surprised. The scene of the ball, where Lizzie is dancing with, I think
it's with Mr. Collins.
It's with Mr. Collins, yeah. And the way that a quote country dance works is that the dancers aren't like together you're not dancing with your partner all the time like a waltz, you know, it's not a partner dance in that way. That's more modern than what this is. This is like, I mean, everybody knows what I'm talking about, but like there's
like a hoedown.
It's like a hoedown. There's a bunch of dancers and they're sort of walking in certain types of formations, with each couple like coming down the middle. So you only really see each other for a few seconds as you pass each other, but like, you know that you're dancing with your particular partner. And there's a whole scene in the book and in the 1995 version when Lizzie's dancing with Mr. Darcy, and they talk about the subjects that are appropriate to discuss when you're dancing, because you have to stick to short, easy topics because you don't actually spend that much time together and you keep getting interrupted. This is a thing that people would have been very familiar with. But Lizzie's dancing with Mr. Collins, and it's like written as a funny scene that they keep getting separated as they're trying to talk to each other and like getting more and more frustrated. And it's certainly funny. Like
yes.
Keira Knightley is funny, and
Tom Hollander
is
come back to him.
Funny, but it is not Pride and Prejudice if you are trying to do a Pride and Prejudice where everybody is very comfortable with the fact that they live in 1810. Does that make sense?
I think it absolutely does.
Yeah.
I think it's something we brought up many times. We'll bring it up many, many more times. So yes, it fights with the period at every turn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that leads me to the next thing about the writing, is that the characterization is often wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And we could run through everyone. I don't want to run through everyone. Let me bring up, like, to me, the worst offender of all of them is Bingley.
Yeah. He's such a hairdo.
He's a dumb hairdo. He's an idiot. Like, Bingley in every good version and in the book, we talked about it before. Like, he is maybe a little naive.
Mm-hmm.
He is very positive.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very nice person.
Mm-hmm.
He has a really genuine outlook, and I think he sees the best in people.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I can't imagine someone trying to have a conversation with him and talking to him and him going kind of glassy-eyed and staring off into the middle distance because he genuinely doesn't understand the words that are coming out of people's mouths.
Yes.
That's the version of Bingley that I got from this.
Yeah.
He really seems like just kind of a simpleton who is always just a little bit behind whatever's happening.
Yeah, and then you go into like, well, why does Jane like him? And if she likes him, maybe she's kind of dumb. Do you know what I mean? And then that makes us not like Jane, who we're supposed to like.
He's just wrong. He's not Bingley. He is a new character who is very sweet and very cute.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't give a shit about him. So I don't care.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't care.
Yeah.
I said I was going to give one example, but now I have a couple more that are coming to mind. But do you have anything in particular?
No, I was just going to say, like, again, I feel like it's a flaw of the writing that the characters are drawn broadly and there's no subtlety.
Do you know where I think this suffers a lot?
Where?
The Five Daughters. I like Kitty and Lydia, for example. I can't tell them apart.
Yeah, they're interchangeable.
They genuinely interchangeable, which it doesn't serve the story at all. If you're going to, this goes back to what I was saying, if you're going to do the story and you're going to have all five daughters, they should feel like separate characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like they've all had the edges kind of sanded down a little bit. So like Lydia and Kitty feel like the same character. It doesn't really feel like one of them is in charge and the other one isn't. Mary is nowhere near as funny as she was in the other ones.
She's just kind of there. And again, I'm watching Mary, and like I almost couldn't find Mary most of the time.
Like she was just a little too much like Lydia and Kitty. She's still Mary. They make her kind of goth. Like she's always wearing black, which doesn't make sense for the time. Anyway, the daughters just like don't feel like the daughters. Jane just feels kind of, she's nice, but she doesn't really have choices or decisions. Like I'm sure the line is in there and someone will say like, what are you talking about? She has the exact same line that Susanna Harker does in 1995 where she looks at Lizzie and says, I would like to marry for love. Mm-hmm. I'm positive that that's in there. I don't remember it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it is, honestly.
Because I feel like Jane is just kind of one note the entire time. I don't really see her being sad sometimes and happy sometimes, like a person.
Right.
I didn't get that impression. I think Lizzie comes off the best. Like, I think she actually comes out of this pretty well.
She does. She's just very modern. And again, it gives me the impression that the writer thought that modern young ladies wouldn't relate to Lizzie if she were acting in the dictates of the time in which this movie is set. So they made her super modern. Mm-hmm. That's my impression.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Can I say one last thing about the writing before we move on? I think the tone is all over the place. And this, I think, goes nicely into the production because we need to talk about Joe Wright, the director, a little bit. But I can't tell if this movie knows what it wants to be.
Yeah.
I don't know if it thinks it wants to be a comedy or a drama, because if it wants to be a comedy, the dramatic scenes are too dramatic. Mm-hmm. And if it wants to be a drama, the comedic scenes are too comedic.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's kind of bipolar. This movie is definitely Pride and Prejudice at 11.
Yeah.
And we've seen that before with some other adaptations. Like, I don't want to go so far as to say this is Pride and Prejudice, the action spectacular.
No, it's not quite.
But it is amped up. Everything's amped up.
Hey, remember the part where Mr. and Mrs. Bennet bone?
Yeah, I don't remember that, actually. You're lying.
They bone.
You're lying.
They bone.
Gross.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
If I had seen it, I would have forced myself to forget.
Yeah.
So I don't. Why do you have a problem with that?
Because it's gross.
Do you actually have a problem with that? Because actually, if I'm like looking at it, I don't see why I should have a problem with it.
I just don't like it.
It doesn't seem right for their characters.
No, it doesn't seem right for their characters. Like, if like Mr. Bennet is so detached from everyone else, do you think he's like going to his wife's bedchamber every night? And do you think she's like happy to receive him, like with her nerves?
I feel like this version of Mr. Bennet, and I want to dig in a little bit on Donald Sutherland too, because this version of Mr. Bennet, I think they've kind of put him up on a pedestal a little bit, maybe in a way that I did in the past. I used to think of him as much better a person than I do now, because he has his flaws. Mm-hmm. He really has flaws. And I thought Donald Sutherland was a great version of this character. This is something I said in the first episode. I thought he was great. I don't know what I was talking about. He's like at a 3 the entire time.
Yeah, he's very subdued.
And he's great. They love him. The filmmakers love this version of the character. They think he is just beyond reproach, sitting up there on this pedestal, just occasionally deciding I'm going to bestow my wisdom onto people. Mm-hmm. He's always great in every scene he's in. He's always nice and he's always kind all the time. And I feel like when the Bennets sleep together, A lot of that comes from maybe they were trying to say, no, our Bennett, Mr. Bennett, why wouldn't he want to make sweet, sweet love to Mrs. Bennett?
Like they really
of course
do
he would
enjoy
deign to
each
do
other.
that.
Yeah, like they have a good relationship. They don't. They don't have a good relationship. They really don't.
This was like the biggest thing that changed in the last 3 years. I really liked him before. I genuinely don't like this version of Mr. Bennett anymore. And I love Donald Sutherland. I didn't like him in this. I thought he was miscast.
Yeah.
Talk about Joe Wright a little bit more.
Okay. Is this moving into production?
Yeah.
Great.
I think I know who the star of this movie is.
Joe Wright.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he sets up some, I mean, you pointed out, he sets up some beautiful shots. Like there are scenes.
Superficially beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are scenes in this that look like Thomas Kincaid, the painter of light. Like if it wasn't so cheesy. Do you know what I mean? Like that scene where they're all kind of sitting under the tree. Oh, where she's with the gardeners and they're like having lunch under the tree is so pretty. And there's the scene where Mr. and Mrs. Bennett make sweet love. They do this cool thing where at night the camera kind of pans across the house and you're seeing into every window. So you're seeing like what each character is doing. And that's interesting. Like that's an interesting scene and an interesting concept. And I don't think that's out of place in Pride and Prejudice, which is a story with many characters that you're interested in knowing what they're doing. But like sort of shot after shot like that, it makes you start to think that the director's kind of in love with himself.
Yeah, I think he had something to prove. I think a lot like the writer. I think the people who made this had something to prove because this was his first movie. And I could see him saying, I got to make my mark. I've got Pride and Prejudice. I need to do it. I don't really think he cared much about Pride and Prejudice because I don't think he got Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
I think he got pieces of it.
Yeah.
I think he was like, oh no, I identify with the idea that like this guy and this girl, like maybe they kind of like each other, but they don't. And he can't tell her how he feels, but then he can tell her. And it has to, it's got to be in the rain. Oh my goodness, it has to be in the rain. The scene has to be in the rain.
Yeah.
Like I can see him having this train of thought, taking him from one thought to another as he's identifying with things in the story. But I don't think he actually took the time to get the story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems to me that there were many, many, many production decisions where what would have been historically accurate or reasonable was sacrificed for what would look pretty or cool or interesting.
Yeah.
But it wasn't taken far enough that you can look at it and say, oh, this is deliberately anachronistic, because it's not A Knight's Tale.
Yep.
It's not Sophia Coppola's Marie Antoinette. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in Marie Antoinette, she's wearing Converse All-Stars. So any human being would know. Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, but I hear it's good. But there's like famously the scene where she's like leaning back and she's wearing Converse All-Stars, which is signifying something, among other things, signifying that the filmmaker does not intend this to be a historically accurate film, which is fine because it's done artistically. But in this case, it's either not accurate enough or it's not taking the inaccuracy far enough to be obviously deliberate. So you're kind of left thinking, did they just not know or did they just not care?
Yeah.
For me, a lot of that comes down to like hair and costumes and set.
Again,
and
it's fighting with the period at every turn.
It's fighting with the period. I mean, no one would have worn their hair like that. Not one hairstyle in this. Everyone's got their hair down in like shaggy bangs, like around their face all the time. And like, I don't want to be a jerk who's like, it's not historically accurate. Of course, they would have worn their hair curled to the right, not to the left. Anyone knows that. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is you can look at this and genuinely not understand that it's supposed to be set in 1810. And that's frustrating.
The funny thing about it is, like, just to jump in for a second, they actually took a lot of pride in the fact that it's not set in 1810. It's set in like 1795.
1795. That's actually what it's supposed to be.
No, but because most movies will set it in 1810 because that's when the book was published.
Right.
But they said no. The book started being written in the mid 1790s. That's when we're going to set it.
Yeah.
They were so proud of themselves for doing that.
Right.
So that's what makes it so weird that they seem to not really care that much about the time period.
Yeah, like they still would have worn their hair up. Like the scene, Caroline Bingley's costume. Oh, there's a character that was cut. Caroline Bingley is Bingley's only sister. He does not have Mrs. Hurst or Mr. Hurst. They cut both those characters.
The Sir and Lady not appearing in this film.
There it is. But her dresses are basically underwear. Like she shows up at the ball essentially in underwear, like with bare arms up to the shoulder.
Because the cleavage was fine, but the arms.
Yeah, no,
whoa.
like you wouldn't have.
No.
You wouldn't have. And okay, we got to talk about the pigs in the house.
Well, that gets to another thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. The Bennets are poor in the sense of people who don't have like fortunes, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are gentlefolk. They have servants, they have horses, they have carriages, they have clothes, they have plenty to eat. The girls don't do anything in the kitchen. You know what? Like it's very like at one point in the book, Mr. Collins asks which of the daughters prepared the meal, and Mrs. Bennet is very offended because they are certainly wealthy enough to keep a cook and a servant.
Isn't that in this version?
No, that was in the 1981 that he kept going on and on and on about it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. But that's what being poor means in the context of this. It means that they don't have a lot to live on like after their father's death. But it doesn't mean that they're living in a filthy, broken down, completely dilapidated, like rambling old house with pigs living on the ground floor, dirty all the time. Because that's what they do in this movie. And when they go to the dance, it's like literally in a barn.
Yeah.
And like, again, I feel like I sound like a real like academic stickler jerk who doesn't enjoy anything and like has no joy.
Which couldn't possibly be true given how many episodes we've done of this show.
Yeah.
And how many things you have enjoyed.
Yeah. Because I don't think things have to be historically accurate to be good. But I get the sense that they're saying, look, this is Pride and Prejudice. And it's just not.
It would be amazing if they had called it Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice.
That's really what it is. Like it should have been called Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice because it would be in a grand tradition of things just like not making sense.
Yeah, I mean, everything you're talking about is like, it's a decision that makes sense to me. I understand the decision. I just don't agree with the execution of it.
Yeah, and it looks cool and it looks pretty and the girls are pretty and their costumes are pretty and the way that they've designed the house is consistent in the story that they're trying to tell. I again just still question whether or not it's Pride and Prejudice. And maybe I'm just a horrible stickler. I know this is some people's favorite version. Like I just feel like I'm being really conservative, which I feel like I'm usually not. I don't know. Something about it rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
That's all.
I think a big part of it for me, like the room in their house that I think of all the time is Mr. Bennet's like study, the library. It looks as if they found a library full of books that were published around 1800, but they found them today and put them in the library.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. A book published in 1800 that someone was reading in 1800 doesn't look like it's a 200-year-old copy of a book.
Right.
It looks new.
Right.
And his library looks like it was lost in time. Everything looks old.
Yeah.
It's not just dirty. It's everything looks really, really old.
Yeah. And the whole house looks that way.
Yeah.
That's exactly. And it looks cool. Like any given shot looks cool.
A lot of work went into it.
It looks very theatrical because like a lot of the windows, like they don't have any glass in them. So their breakfast room is like open to the outside. So it almost kind of looks like a avant-garde theatrical set that's not meant to be realistic.
I was going to say it looks very like Instagrammable.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
very, very vintage. If there are any influencers that you follow that are all about like doing their house or their apartment up in like a vintage fashion, there are so many shots that look like it could be in a nook of someone's living room.
Yeah, and the color scheme is very consistent. It's a lot of like sort of browns and pinks and yellows. Like it's pretty. It looks nice. I don't quibble with the aesthetics of it, but I still question whether it's Pride and Prejudice.
I think it's a taste thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's one other thing about the production that I wanted to mention.
Sure.
You talk about like the timeliness and the historical accuracy kind of getting in the way. There were some choices that Joe Wright made that I thought were kind of fundamentally undermining the stories of the characters. And I just want to give one example of it. And it's not like this is the only time it happens. It happens throughout the entire movie. And it goes back to what I was saying with the script about tone. Okay. When Lizzie gets the letter saying that Lydia has run away with Wickham. Of all the things that Lizzie goes through in the original story, not in this movie, but in the original story, of all the things that Lizzie goes through, where would you say this ranks in terms of the level of emotional turmoil that it's putting her through?
It's high.
High.
Very high.
Is there anything else that's putting her through so much turmoil? Like maybe other than Darcy's first proposal.
No, this is definitely. I mean, not only the implication of her sister being actually physically in danger, but like she understands immediately the ramifications that this is going to have for her whole family.
This is terrible. What's happening?
It's terrible news.
And one of the ways that you can show the audience that this is really truly terrible is to take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if you remember it.
I do remember.
But in this scene, it's staged like a comedy.
Yeah. Like she bursts into tears, like to the point that she can't speak, but it's like...
And she's always like leaving the room and entering the room and leaving the room because she just can't.
She just can't and coming back and everyone's like, oh my gosh, I'm so confused.
Matthew McFadden does as Darcy, who we haven't even really mentioned yet. He does this amazing bit of physical comedy. I have grown to appreciate him as a comedic performer so much in the last few years. I fucking love him now. He didn't mean much to me at the time, but now he's great. I'm fully on team Matthew McFadden, maybe not as Darcy, but I'm on his side. So he does this amazing bit of physical comedy where he's standing out in like the living room area with the gardeners. She's reading the letter in the other room and he's very awkwardly going like, I don't know what to do with my body. Mm-hmm. And he goes to sit down and it's perfect timing because just as his butt is hitting the seat, she runs in sobbing and he immediately stands back up because he needs to have that stick back up his butt because that's who he is and that's what he needs to be doing. If I'm looking at it purely from the staging of comedy, it's great. I think it's one of the best scenes in the entire movie by that measure. Mm-hmm. But it undermines the emotional reality of what Lizzie is going through to an absurd degree.
Yeah.
I was so offended on behalf of Lizzie's story.
Yeah, and her tears in the scene are like comedy tears.
Yeah.
It's like comedy sobbing.
It was done by someone who I don't think understood that this actually was really bad.
Yeah.
This is a bad thing. It's really bad.
Yeah.
But he might have just been looking it through like, oh, so like they just ran off and they're like shacking up together. Like, it's fine. Everyone's overreacting a bit though, aren't they? Mm-hmm. But they're not.
Yeah.
I would say some of them are underreacting.
Yeah.
Mr. Bennett is like underreacting a little bit to some of this stuff. That's one example, but the movie is full of that. I think Joe Wright is constantly getting in the way of this story working.
Yeah.
I think he is always trying to say, like, what bit of business can I do? What interesting staging can I do? How can I draw more attention to the fact that this is a movie? How can I draw more attention to the camera? How can I draw attention away from the characters and the story as much as possible so that everyone knows that I made this movie? Mm-hmm. And I don't appreciate it. I appreciate it less now than I did 3 years ago.
Yeah. So you were talking about Matthew McFadden, which is probably a good segue into our last point, which is casting.
Yes.
How do you feel about the casting?
In general?
Yes.
Most of the cast is passable at best. Mm-hmm. I'm struggling to come up with people who excel. Mm-hmm. This movie doesn't have a single person who's playing my favorite version of the character.
Yeah.
I guess it's a little shitty because pretty much 1995 has all my favorite versions of the character, but not because it has to. When we watched it the first time, Tom Hollander as Mr. Collins really stood out to me as someone that I loved.
Yes, and when we went to rewatch it, I said, oh, do we really have to rewatch it? And you were like, yes, Tom Hollander as Mr. Collins really just redeems this movie. Do you still feel that way after the rewatch?
No.
Yeah.
No, I think they were so wrong with the character because now I just suddenly have this different lens that I'm looking through with this movie. Mr. Collins is a dummy, but he still lives in this time period. Mm-hmm. And what they seem to have done with him, I think they made the decision to put him on the spectrum, which isn't in and of itself a bad thing. That can be something that's a really valuable addition in an adaptation like this. But it does mean that you have to handle it with a little more care. And now, upon this viewing, I don't think they handled it with care. Now, it kind of ruined it for me on this viewing. And I don't know. So I didn't like him anymore. And then I look at the rest of the people in this, and it's not like I didn't enjoy anyone in this. Like, Keira Knightley did a good job. I think she did a really good job doing what she was asked to do,
Yeah.
which was deliver a very modern Lizzie Bennet.
Mm-hmm. No, agreed. No, I don't think that like this is us not liking this is her fault. And again, like she's very pretty. Matthew McFadden's very pretty. I definitely understand people getting pants feelings when they see the two of them like having romantic scenes together.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I totally get that. I don't want to.
Famously, this is a very pants-feeling movie.
Yeah, like I don't want to yuck your yum. If that's
I got
your
some
thing.
pants feelings in this movie. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie. Oh my God, that scene where like Matthew McFadden is walking through the mist to Lizzie at the end.
Yeah, it's
I don't know what it is where we suddenly have to have like
Walking
Darcy
scenes.
walking through a field for 5 minutes. In this one, it works much better.
Yeah, well, he didn't walk for nearly as long.
It
And
felt like it.
He walked while being handsomer than the 1980 version, which I think is important.
Being a little more human.
Yeah.
He definitely came across as being a little more like flesh and blood.
Yeah. I mean, we sort of talked about like specifics in the casting, like as we went, like we talked about Donald Sutherland, we talked about Keira Knightley, we talked about Charlotte, we talked about Mr. Collins. So like, I don't know that we need to go through all of them again.
No, but how crazy is it that like, and this is exactly what I'm talking about in terms of the cast being passable at best. This exact same thing happened with the 2011 Jane Eyre, which did not do it for either of us.
Yeah.
I hated that movie.
Yeah.
We have another movie made in the 2000s, 2010s, where who are you going to cast? You need an old lady character? Who are you going to cast?
Judi Dench.
You're going to cast Judi Dench.
Yeah. She's barely in
do
it.
they
I mean,
call on her to do anything that Judi Dench is really good at other than sitting there and being Judi Dench?
No, really not. Like she's almost nothing. She may have been on set for a couple of days. And I like Judi Dench is great, but like she's almost nothing in this. And I think I don't remember if I said this in the previous episode or not. I think that Judi Dench in modern times has been called upon. I have seen Judi Dench in a number of things where she is reprising a role that was very iconic in the past. And now they're doing the modern version of it and they need the old lady, so they call on Judi Dench. And bless her, I think she's trying not to draw upon previous performances. She's trying to make things her own.
Yeah. Because she's a goddamn professional.
But inevitably what happens is she ends up delivering a very subtle performance in a piece that is not subtle. She did it in the Importance of Being Earnest, the Rupert Everett one, where she played Lady Bracknell. She played it really subtle because I think she was just trying to put her own spin on it. I didn't think that worked at all. She was in that Jane Eyre as Mrs. Fairfax. We didn't really love her performance, and it's the same in this. She's trying not to be Barbara Lee Hunt because that performance is so iconic. She's trying to do a more subtle actorly thing. I appreciate what she's trying to do or is being directed to do. She's Judi Dench.
It's kind of the opposite of the 1980 version where she just came off as so comical and so stupid that you don't take her seriously.
Yeah.
Like this one, she is Cruella de Vil.
Yeah.
Like she is very intense.
She's very intense, very quiet, but ultimately like really forgettable.
Yeah.
Like I almost forgot she was in this until you just mentioned it.
Mm-hmm. What about like Brenda Blethyn as Mrs. Bennet?
Again, like I think trying to add I don't know what she's trying to do. Like she and she's a great actress. Like
Yeah.
she's been in so many things, and it just kind of came off as just bland and generic Mrs. Bennet for me.
Mm-hmm. It seemed like the biggest joke that she had involved like a whole like gaggle of geese that she had to run through. It was like physical comedy,
Yeah.
but it wasn't character based comedy.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what Mrs. Bennet is all about. Mary wasn't nearly as good. Lydia and Kitty are totally interchangeable. I actually think, like, if they had done this a few years later, Carey Mulligan, who played Kitty, would have been an amazing Lizzie.
Yeah, for sure.
She would have been fantastic. Like, there are such good people in this movie.
They assembled a great cast. Like it's almost like it's almost like the opposite. We were talking about like the 95 version, why it works. And it's like, yeah, you do everything right. It's no surprise that it works. Like this is like a great cast being directed to work against their own talent, because I think you've kind of squarely placed the blame in the lap of the director for this one. And I don't disagree, because all of these people are great actors and are certainly capable of delivering great performances.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Bah. And then Mr. Wickham. So like, I just have so many more things to say about this, and it's just frustrating. I'm deeply frustrated that like 3 years didn't make this movie better.
Yeah.
I'm really upset that this movie is worse for us than it was the first time we watched it, because it does mean so much to so many people, and they're not wrong, because the pants feelings are genuine.
Mm-hmm.
They really are.
Yeah.
And I'll bring it back to Matthew McFadden. I appreciate what we have watched him together now. What did we think of him in Howard's End?
We really liked him.
We liked him so much in
Yeah,
that.
a lot.
That was like the first thing that needed to happen for us, because we didn't like him when we did this first episode.
Yeah.
And that redeemed him so much. And then I just watched the first 2 seasons of Succession, and he is a comedic highlight in that show. He's amazing. And I could see him playing a really, really good Darcy. And here, he plays a fine Darcy.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a great Darcy. He's a fine Darcy. And I think for the best people in this movie, I think the best that either of us can say is they were fine.
Yeah.
I thought I loved Mr. Collins. I don't. He's fine. It's fine. And ultimately, I don't know why they put so much energy and so much work into making something that I just don't think is going to withstand the test of time. It feels very 2005.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel very timeless.
Well, I think that's a good place to leave it. Hopefully we didn't upset too many people.
I wonder if anyone like listened to this one going like, well, I'm sure that they're going to like it more this time. And I feel bad.
I feel bad.
I genuinely feel bad. Want to do some quadrants really quickly?
Let's do it.
Which was the thing we didn't do
Yeah,
at the time?
Absolutely.
Okay, so 1940, I think we already covered this. Do you think that they cared about the source material, the book Pride and Prejudice, when they were making this movie?
No.
Do you think they were successful?
No. Ultimately, no.
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 I agree with that. 1980, do you think they cared about the source material, Pride and Prejudice?
I think someone did somewhere along the line.
I think so.
Yeah.
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 Was it successful?
No, it was not.
No.
No.
1985 did they care?
Yes.
1985 was it successful?
Yes.
Okay, should we dwell on it?
No.
Okay. 2005, do you think they cared about the source material?
Someone did.
Someone did, but the right people didn't.
Yeah.
And that's what frustrates me.
Yeah. I don't think the director did.
Yeah.
Like I think as you say, the writer may have.
Mm-hmm. Was it successful? Do you want me to take the bullet here?
Yeah.
At the risk of upsetting people who we like and hope like us and hope like the show and hope understand that this is just our opinion. No, this was not successful.
Yeah.
It is not a successful movie.
I feel bad saying it. I don't often feel bad saying it wasn't successful, but I do because I don't want to upset people.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was not successful. For whatever I personally am looking for in a Pride and Prejudice, I did not find it here.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's all I have to say.
Well, I just want to thank everyone, the few of you who are still around. This has been an extra long episode, but I think Pride and Prejudice deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely appreciate getting a chance to get a second crack at this one.
Yeah.
I feel much better about this one.
I'm glad.
Than I do the first one. Well, this has been Adapt or Perish. If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast, even if you want to yell at us about our opinion about the 2005 Pride and Prejudice. And if you tweet about the show, even something about that, don't forget to use the AdaptCast hashtag. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adaptorperishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 2 great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated.
Hey, happy birthday.
Oh, yeah, it's my birthday as we record this right now.
As we record this, it is Jeremy's birthday.
That's not a thing from the book. That's just a nice thing in real life for you to say to me.
It's your birthday.
Yay.
Yay. Bye,
It's a good
everybody.
one. I'm 37. I'm not old.
Oh, wow.